President Buhari underlined the enormous task of economic re-engineering that awaits his administration in 2021 when he told the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting this week how much of a priority he considers tackling food inflation in the new year. And he also reminded all about the need to stay vigilant regarding COVID-19. Bravo, many will say. But analysts are convinced that food inflation is just a fraction of what the president has to deal with in the new year. Joining us now from Dubai, United Arab Emirates, to have a conversation around President Buhari and the challenges of 2021 and beyond is Dr. Daniel Bwala, a lawyer and member of the Lincolns in London, also a member of the All Progressives Congress. Dr. Bwala also aspired for his party's nomination for the Federal Capital Territory senatorial seat during the 2019 general election. Welcome to the program, Daniel Bwala. It's good to see you again.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Abati. I'm glad to also talk to Adesua and the most honorable Oseni.
Most honorable.
Anyway, Daniel Bwala,
thank you so much.
You've written this article in which you tried an assessment of President Buhari, and you are trying to define certain priorities for him in the year 2021. You want him to deal with the pandemic. You want him to be a presiding president. What do you mean by a presiding president? The president is the head of the democratic process and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And our constitution gives the president of Nigeria enormous power. And you're saying, he should also engage with citizens. Are you, by any, indication, trying to say, as some people have said, that the president is not in charge? Is that what you are trying to say?
Well, thank you for having me. And it's a pleasure to talk on these issues. And there are issues of concerns to me. That's why I painstakingly dropped the article in the hope that it will get to Mr. President to see that one of his many admirers and supporters is deeply concerned about governance and the need for us sometimes to bring home truth to the government. Let me give you a perspective. If you look at the problems, you've already highlighted some of them in your discussions earlier today. We're battling as a country with spirits and human beings. The human aspect are the insurgency and multiple problems that we face in all fronts. The spiritual aspect, I use the word spirit actually in a connotation sense, but I mean the pandemic, which is quite bad. If you look at the constitutional framework of the country, although we are running what seemed like a presidential system of government, but the difference between our pattern and that of the US is that in the case of the United States, you can see the devolution of powers across the country. So there are aspects of government and even security that are not the responsibility of the president, probably that of the state. In Nigeria, if you look at Section 5, it is quite explicit. It says the executive powers of the federation is vested in the president. So it is one man who is responsible for everything that affects us as a country. Now, even when you look at Section 4 and Section 6 that talks about the legislature and the judiciary, none of them touches on the use and management of security apparatus for the purposes of maintaining law and order. And the problem we face squarely rests on the decks of Mr. President. Now, the reason why I use the word the president must be a presiding president, I am not oblivious of the fact that as the president, he's also the commander-in-chief. But I am also, as a politician, very familiar with the fact that in every democratic setting, there are tendencies that you will see pull and push of interest and forces in government. And sometimes when you see executive acts of the government, either directly from the president or through his agent, as provided in Section 5, you can then draw a deduction as to whether in this particular sense or circumstance, the president authorized this or the president is unaware of this, and there is interest operating in his government. Now, I judge based on what we hear, what we see, and what we touch. I'll give you an example. The president was quoted to have said that he has discharged his burden, having provided the needed funds for counterintelligence and counterterrorism. That statement, if you take it on to if you give it a literal interpretation, you would say that the president is obfuscating his responsibility because you are saying, I've given the money, I don't care. But the last time I checked, he is not the chief financial officer of the country. He's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. It means that to be a presiding president is to make funds available and ensure that the funds are used. To be a presiding president is to make sure that the critical instrument, architecture, and agents of government that are needed in executing the Constitution are not only monitored, but that the president exercises the power of both hiring and firing. Now, we have seen in the last 5 years the power of hiring through the various appointments. We have seen less of the higher power of firing. And that is why there is a consensus across the nation that the president needs to rejig the security architecture. Nobody can change security architecture in the country. You don't even have a right, in the real sense of the word, to begin to call to question the operations of agents that run this security architecture because you did not elect them. But the man that you elected is the one that appointed them. And that is why, if you look at Section 14, very importantly, Dr. Abati, it is correct and explains everything about Nigeria and why criticism must be accepted in a democratic government. Section 14 has 3 subsections. The first one talks about sovereignty belongs to the people, through whom the government derives authority to function. That is the people. The second part says the responsibility of government in provision of life, protection of life, and the welfare of the people. And the third subsection says the people will participate in the government. What does that mean? We have the authority, and we gave the authority to Mr. President, and he has the duty to protect our lives and our welfare. And then the third part is we are not going to be watching him like we're in a movie theater. We are going to be active participants in the government. It means if in any sense in the course of governance, we feel that the president is not carrying out duties as required, we will exercise our right as provided in the Constitution through free speech to begin to air our opinion and express our views about the way government is run, in the hope that this public pressure and opinion will weigh on public policy. So even when in the last couple of days I see how Martin Kuka was vilified by Nigerians. Now, I have my own understanding. For example, I do not share the concluding part of his statement, but the premise, I agree with it. The premise is that there are insecurity problems, rising case of insecurity, so troubling. The concluding part is the one that people misconstrue when he said, if this thing had happened under the leadership of a president who is a Southerner and a Christian, this thing would not have happened long before now. That would have been cool. Now, that aspect I disagree because before the president came on board, there was a Southern president who was also a Christian, and there was no coup. But the premise is where I choose to focus my point. And he is too much a personality and his contribution to the nation that I would take one issue and vilify him. And so we speak contextually in the same way that when the president was looking to run for office, there were a number of statements he made in the past that were considered as treasonable felony. But when people were saying treasonable felony, I didn't look at it. I look at the passion with which he said that, even though I didn't share the view. There must be tolerance. The people must participate in government by criticizing or by making suggestions to the government on things that should be done. So that is what informed the point that I said the president must be a presiding president, exercising not only the power of hiring, the power of firing, making sure that there is monitoring.
All right. You also said that the president should act and move fast. And I'm wondering, are you not being recklessly optimistic for a president who has on several occasions admitted that, he does his job at a slow pace? And how would he move from being slow, admitting to being slow, to now moving and acting fast as you want him to be?
There was a time if you wrote a letter to somebody in Lagos, you will write it physically and post it in iPost, and you will wait for some weeks before the person gets it. And then the person will read, thinks about it, and then reply you. Those days are over. We're in the age of technology. That is why one fake news in the media online can destabilize a country. So in the same way that everything is moving fast, the government and those who execute the Constitution must also move fast. Now, with the greatest respect, I do not share the view that slow pace style leadership is a style. I feel it's a weakness, and I will explain why. Now, I can understand that the president has some two things that probably distinguish him from every other person. Number one, he's advanced in age. And number two, sometimes back he had a medical condition. So maybe these two things may have weight, but it is not a style. You understand? It's not a style. If your ability to be a step ahead of the enemy is your comparative advantage in warfare, and therefore, acts of government must be timeous, act of government must be fast. Now, why do you think that the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria prescribe a time period for everything? Even the government, the president will run for 4 years, then he has the opportunity to run for another 4 years. Why do you think Jonathan was, people made a choice for President Buhari over Jonathan in 2015? Because people were not comfortable with the way and style in which things were moved. And so when I hear his image handlers saying that we have to cope up with this is a management style of the president, I said, no, it's not a style. With the greatest respect, I feel it's a weakness. Because if you are outsmarted by the opponent because you are unable to act fast, do you call that a style? So I am of the view that the president has to act fast. In 2021, the way things are unfolding, I do not think that the same approach we have given it over the years will be able to cope with that. They say doing one thing over and over again and expecting a different result is a definition of insanity. So the president has to engage and engage timeously. If there is information on social media that is posted which is negative to the government, in the 24 hours, there must be a robust response by the media manager. The idea that fake news will last for 3, 4 days, damage the public opinion before people will now come out to begin to discountenance or even put pressure on security operatives to begin to clamp down on rights. And that's why I also talked about this idea of the president ensuring that those who advise him are properly checked.
All right. A good one you stated there. Honorable, let me call you honorable because you called me honorable before at the start. You talked about a part when I read your expose that really, really got me. And it's something, a lot of people have been talking about. In the Bible, there was a certain character called Ahithophel. And we all know the level of counsel Ahithophel gave. And you talked about the double checking of counsel, which a lot of people will say has been a prominent part. This question you answer after the break anyway. And I wanted just to set the scene around what happened when the president was supposed to visit the National Assembly. After he had accepted he was going to visit the National Assembly and talk to them and brief them. And all of a sudden he had a meeting with a couple of people and the next thing he said, that's not the case again. And we'll go for a quick break, we'll come back. All right, welcome back to the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. We still have Dr. Daniel Bwala, a lawyer and member of Lincoln's Inn, London, a member of the All Progressive Congress, and we're pretty much talking about his article where he, talked about some things in what the presidency implement in the new year. So as I was saying, I talked about counsel, I was talking about double-checking counsel, and I talked about the National Assembly issue, what the president said he was going to address at first, and afterwards that was called back. And we've seen other issues in our national life, as regards counsel. The quality of counsel, the president gets, the president is getting, and his managers. I mean, we all saw the Kankara Boys episode, where the presidential spokesperson came out at first to say it was only 10 boys that were missing, and afterwards we found that there was more than 10 boys, about 300 boys, and he came out to apologize, for that. I want to talk about the quality, because a man is only as brave as the quality of the counsel he gets.
Yeah, through the multitude of counselors, the city is saved. Now, let me, by way of full disclosure, state that I know Garba Shehu and I know Femi Adesina as a person. But I know that if I truly love you and we are true friends, I should be able to tell you home truth. I believe that apart from the two of them, there are quite a number of the president's handler, including the Minister of Information and the rest. I think that either they have a meltdown or they are basking in the euphoria of self-deceit. And I will explain what I mean by that. In Africa, when you want to get advisors, that is the problem we have in Africa. In the rest of the world, you choose advisors, they will be able to tell you the truth politely, humbly. Now, even if they are wrong. But in Africa, either some leaders choose people that they want them to praise. I want people to praise me, so I choose them. And so because they know the premise on which I brought them to board is for them to praise me, they will never bring to light those things that are very important for me if I do not like it. Or on the other hand, you have advisors that although are working with leaders, but these advisors were suggested to the leaders by others, or they were even thrust to the leaders by others. And this kind of people have interest to protect rather than primary interest, which is the leadership of that person. Then thirdly, because in Africa, we do not want to tell the truth because of the fear that we may not get favor, most of the times we hide that truth. And I'm saying that because I have close relationship with stronger people in government. And anytime I engage with them in the conversation, you won't believe, sometimes the opinion they share is different from what they say in the public space. But the point is that for every mistake that is being done, lives are lost. That is the issue. That now crisis and insecurity has become so bad that some of these little things that could have been done to affect these things could have come through advice by people. Now, look at the National Assembly case, for example. Whoever advised the president at the beginning that the president needed to go, because like I said, he is not obligated to go at the time. But when the president said, I'm coming, he has to respect the other branch of government. Now, whoever advised him thereafter that he shouldn't go, with the greatest respect, that person misled the president. And I'll tell you why. In our democracy, the three branches of government exist as co-equal. And the legislative branch is critical in even ensuring that the executive branch fulfill her mandate to the people. Now, when I heard that the reason why the president was advised not to go was because if he went to that place, he would have been embarrassed. I said, that is a very weak argument because we have laws operating in the country. And the National Assembly is not consisting of goats and rams and sheep. It's human beings. Now, if that case is the reason why we're saying, has the president not gone to the National Assembly a couple of times to present the budget? Was he embarrassed? And thirdly, when he appears in the National Assembly to address them, there's not going to be Q&A. It is through Q&A that you feel somebody will embarrass you. And fourthly, the leaders have expressed their concerns. So you already are familiar with the reason why they are calling you. You come and address the country. And that's why the other part of the article, I say the president must engage with the people. I am telling you 60 to 70% of the reason why the president has attracted criticism and condemnation is because the president has allowed his media managers to shield him. Unfortunately for them, for the most part, they commit so much of gaps, inconsistency, incoherency in the way they project this and then come afterward to, correct it is a problem. But if the president engage with Nigerians, speak to them, visit places of natural disaster, visit places, look at the governor of Borno. Anytime there is a Boko Haram operation anywhere, he drives there. That's leadership. You may not provide all of the solution, but when the people see you there, they know that somebody who cares for them is there. The president should also address the people through the media. So the idea that they keep shielding him, to me, a majority of them are bad advisors, because if you are properly advising your principal, you will tell the principal to engage with the Nigerian people.
Well, Daniel Bwala, thank you. But I hope you have heard of the phrase willing willers. Considering the fact that you are a member of the APC, and even at the time you were in the National Working Committee, now you have joined the willing willers, to borrow Femi Adesina's famous phrase. I'm sure he's watching you, and he'll be wondering why you have joined the whalers. But thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your vacation, and we wish you a happy new year in advance.